Of the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and also to declare that we want the United Nations to ban the bomb. So we have a number of songs and poems and things to remind us of that occasion in the next half an hour. I'm going to ask Calder Valley Voices to start by singing "Oh Let There Be
Oh, let there be peace in this world, in this heart. Oh, let there be peace. Oh, let there be peace. Peace among us all. Oh, let there be peace. Oh, let there be peace in this world, in this heart. Oh, let there be peace. Oh, let there be peace. Peace among us all. Let there be peace. Oh, let there be peace in this world, in this heart. Oh, let there be peace. Oh, let there be peace. Peace among us all.
Jane Hoyle, who's the Deputy Mayor of Calderdale, who's going to read the declaration from the Mayor of Hiroshima. Thank you very much, Jane.
Hello. Well, I'm really pleased to be here to read this peace declaration by the Mayor Matsui Kazumi. On this day, 76 years ago, a single atomic bomb instantly reduced our hometown to a scorched plain. That bombing brought cruel death to countless innocent victims and left those who managed to survive with profound, lifelong, physical and emotional injuries due to radiation, fear of after effects, and economic hardship. One survivor gave birth to a girl soon after the bombing and says, "As more horrors of the bomb came to light, I became more concerned about their effects. I worried less about myself and more about my child. Imagining the future awaiting my daughter, my suffering grew night after sleepless night. No one else should ever have to suffer as we have." These words express the will of survivors who, having known horrors too painful to recall, were condemned to fear, frustration, and agony by the likely future of their children and their own irradiated bodies. When Hibakusha tell their stories, they convey not only horror and inhumanity of nuclear weapons, but also an intense yearning for peace born of compassion. Finally, after 75 long years of sustained activity, their demands have moved the international community. This year, on January the 22nd, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons entered into effect. It remains now for world leaders to support this treaty, shifting their focus toward a truly sustainable society free from nuclear weapons. The novel coronavirus still ravages our world. The community of nations recognizes this threat to humanity and is taking urgent measures to end it. Nuclear weapons developed to win wars are a threat of total annihilation that we can certainly end if all nations work together. No sustainable society is possible with these weapons continually poised for indiscriminate slaughter. The combined wisdom of all peoples must be trained on their total abolition. With more than 8,000 Mayors for Peace member cities in 165 countries and regions, we will promote a worldwide culture of peace. In a global culture where peace is a universal value, world leaders will find courage to correct their policies. At this Peace Memorial Ceremony, marking 76 since the bombing, we offer heartfelt prayers for the peaceful repose of the souls of atomic bomb victims. Together with Nagasaki and like-minded people around the world, we pledge to do everything in our power to abolish nuclear weapons and light the way toward lasting world peace.
Time of the Olympic Games, we've been watching Japan and the coming together of countries in peaceful activities, and that is possible. So let us have 2 minutes of silence to pray, to think of our pledges and what we might do, and in hope that we can make a difference.
Join our commemoration. We are Calder Valley CND for Peace and Justice who've organised this event, which we hold annually to remember. We are here today to stand united and remember the catastrophic effects of the nuclear attacks on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki 76 years ago. We pause to reflect on those whose lives were annihilated in a split second, but also we stand with the countless thousands who suffered and continue to this day to suffer the terrible long-term consequences of these nuclear bombs. The Hibakusha, survivors of the attacks, said, "No one else should suffer as we have." We stand determined that the world should become free of these indiscriminate, destructive and immoral weapons, and that we should never ever forget what happened. We feel frustration and anger that the UK government recently announced that it would increase its nuclear arsenal, in clear breach of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty signed in 1970. The nuclear-armed states are a tiny minority of the world's nations, and yet they take for granted the necessity of nuclear deterrence as a means of security. While billions are spent on even more nuclear warheads, our cash-strapped NHS is in crisis, attempting to fight the battle against COVID. And the effects of climate change are being seen all over the world, including in this town of Hebden Bridge. But we also have hope. At the beginning of this year, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, previously mentioned, also known as the Nuclear Ban Treaty, agreed by 181 nations in 2017, entered into force. To date, 55 nations have signed the treaty, which prohibits any activities involving nuclear weapons, such as development, testing and stockpiling, as well as production, bringing it into line with other international treaties on chemical and biological weapons. However, the UK government did not even attend negotiations and has consistently refused to engage with the process. But in spite of this, a grassroots movement is emerging of local councils, cities and faith groups which pledge support to the nuclear ban treaty in order to put pressure on central government. In our area alone, Hebden Royd Town Council, Todmorden Town Council and Blackshaw Het Parish Councils have already pledged support, as well as Leeds City Council. It is essential that nations increasingly recognise the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons and the ongoing risks posed to both humanity and the environment by their possession. We must continue to speak out against these weapons, remembering the suffering of the Japanese people and others. We must continue to say no more Hiroshimas and work for an end to all nuclear weapons.
I come here to speak this poem, White Shadows, Black Shadows, by James Kirkup. Ray Street, who many of you may know, a veteran peace campaigner, is at home recovering from surgery, and she can't be here to read it, so she asked me to read it in her place. It was another morning, a morning like any other of dust and death, a morning of war, raids, speeches, warnings. In wartime, all mornings are alike. You were crossing a bridge in Hiroshima, a bridge of plain cement, a place without mystery. Below, the grey river ran as always, going somewhere, metalled and moved by the early summer sun. The sun that cast your shadow clearly, a healthy black. It was the shadow of a complete man, someone with a life, a personality, a past, but moving through a present that could have no future. What were you thinking? Were you feared, hated, loved? Were you late for work, sad or sick? Artist, student, photographer or newsman returning home after a night out? What was your plan for the day? Who were you, shadow? I do not know your name, your age, your blood type, and now I shall never see your face, hear your voice. No one will ever know your name, your age, your blood type, and are there any left who remember your face, your voice? Now the name, the face, the voice no longer matter. A plane drilled the blue, as they often did. The river ran. Your shadow was black, then white. The flash was all and nothing. You were not here to hear the rest. Your shade, poor forked human creature, fled like a mist of dew on morning glories. Your breath evaporated, taken away, lost soul, before you even had time to scream. Your shade was white.
Marching in the name of peace. We are marching in the name of peace. We are marching in the name of peace. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching. We are marching in the name of peace. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching. We are marching in the name of singing for a better world. We are 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 singing, singing, we are singing, singing, we are singing for a better world. We are singing, singing, we are singing, singing, we are singing for a better world. See a hamba many loco, 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 see a hamba, hamba, see a hamba, hamba, see a hamba many loco, see a hamba, hamba, see a hamba, hamba, see a hamba many loco.
An award-winning English poet who is also a professional gardener. It's a very lovely poem. It's about extinction, which really has been hanging over us for 76 years. People now think, I think, more really about the climate, but it's all linked up. It's all about our outrageous carelessness. Written sometime between the month of May and the month of May not. Is it possible the sun could turn over a grey cloud and find a May tree underneath? It is possible. Is it possible there could be lines of blossom like bird linen drying on the branches? It is possible. Is it possible a stream could turn over a stone and find a mayfly underneath? It is possible. Is it possible maybe a mayfly might have a passionate 2-second love affair in mid-air? It is possible. Is it possible millions of wind-blown refugees, each with a leather seed case, could stand up and let their green clothes fall on them, the way a child at midnight sits up, stalks straight, asking for water in a trance of heat, and drinks it straight down without waking? It is possible. Is it possible several billion bird-sung springs could prove this hypothesis, that the green grows back every May? Or is it possible May itself may not? It is possible. Thank you.
Very different contexts only connect, and of course we're here today because we know that we are all connected, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. That's true, but some people bear a disproportionate burden of the anger and rage of humanity. And I have two poems to read today. One is a poem by a one-time Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, and who made beards, who had a beard before they were fashionable, of course. And it's called A Poem for Nagasaki. The air is full of blurred words. Something has changed in the war's weather. The children, whose children will show me this, have been sent to the country. In the radiology lab, Takashi fiddles, listening to the ticking bomb in his blood cells, thinks once piercingly of her hands and small mouth, knotting him in the long recital of silent lives under the city's surface, the ripple of blurred Latin changing nothing in the weather of death and confession, thinks once in mid-morning of a kitchen floor flash frozen. When in the starburst centre the little black mouth opens, then clenches, and the flaying wind smooths down the grass, and prints its news black on bright, blinding walls, when it sucks back the milk and breath and skin, and all the world's vowels drown in flayed throats, the hard things, bone and tooth, fuse into consonants of stone. Midori's beads melt in a single mass around the shadow with its blackened hands, carved with their little weeping lips. Days earlier in Hiroshima, in what was left of the clinic chapel, little Don Pedro, turning from the altar to say, "The Lord be with you," heard suddenly what he was about to claim, seeing the black lips, the melted bones. And so, he said, he stood, his small mouth open. He never knew how long, his hands out like a starburst, while the dialogue of stony, voiceless consonants ground across the floor, like gravel in the wind, and the two black mouths opened against each other, nobody knowing for a while which one would swallow which. It's called Let Us Be Midwives, an untold story of the atomic bombing. It's by Sadako Kurihara and it's translated by Richard Minier. And just to tell you, Sadako Kurihara was a poet, writer and peace activist who survived the Hiroshima bombing. Let Us Be Midwives was based on her experience in a shelter in the aftermath of the bombing, and in reality the midwife survived and was later able to meet the child she had delivered. Night, in the basement of a concrete structure now in ruins. Victims of the atomic bomb jammed the room. It was dark, not even a single candle. The smell of fresh blood, the stench of death. The closeness of sweaty people, the moans from out of all of that, and lo and behold, a voice. The baby's coming. In that hellish basement, at that very moment, a young woman had gone into labour. In the dark, without a single match, what to do? People forgot their own pains, worried about her. And then, "I'm a midwife, I'll help with the birth." The speaker, seriously injured herself, had been moaning only moments before. And so, new life was born in the dark of that pit of hell. And so the midwife died before dawn, still bathed in blood. Let us be midwives. Let us be midwives, even if we lay down our lives to do so.
If you've got a copy and you'd like to read along with me, please do. Otherwise, please just listen as you have been. We today declare our hope in the future. From the diversity of our cultural and religious traditions, we have come to renew our belief in the wholeness of the earth and the sanctity of all life. We declare we are at peace with all people of goodwill. We need no leader to define for us any enemy, nor to tell us what we need security for and defense against. Instead, we affirm that our Earth's security rests not in the continuing production of armaments, but in the justice of adequate housing and food, in the justice of meaningful education and work, in the justice of an economic order that gives everyone access to our Earth's abundance, in the justice of human relationships nourished by cooperation, in the justice of safe, clean and renewable energy instead of the perils of nuclear power. We affirm people over property, community over individualism, respect for others in all their diversity. We choose struggle rather than indifference. We choose to be friends of the earth and of one another rather than exploiters. We choose to be citizens rather than subjects. We choose a nuclear-free future, and we will settle for nothing less. Before us today are set life and death. We choose life, that we and those that come after us may live. Let it be so.